Hello and welcome to round 3 of our season 3 Invitational here at the Eternal Tournament Series. I am Truedawn, joined by my wonderful co-caster, LocoPojo.
Welcome, everyone. We have an exciting matchup for you today. Rakano Plate versus Rakano Midrange. Going to be fun aggro decks with a lot of mid-rangey delightfulness smashing up against each other.
Yep. And before we delve into that, we're going to talk about the bracket. Oh, we actually got the matchups mixed up. But yeah, first we're going to talk about the bracket anyway. So this is going to be a losers bracket round. This is the first round of losers bracket. So everyone that is you will see playing is 0-1 and fighting for their tournament legs. This is a double elimination tournament. Sorry. So we will be watching. Actually, sorry, got the matchup.
It's going to be a Rakano Plate deck versus a Felnscar Reanimator deck. So there's at least one plate going into this this particular matchup, but it should be a really delightful match. Calamdur is running just a crazy Reanimator deck with a lot of interesting units to play out, and of course we have the ever Rakano Unearthly with a plate deck that has already got just a number of exciting sideboard options available. We're looking at Unearthly's plate list right here, and it's literally just 12 decks, all of which are plate sideboards. I'm pretty delighted by that.
Yep, and I really like Unearthly's build of the plate deck because it includes aReNGee. He's gotten on the aReNGee train. aReNGee is just exceptionally good. It is a card that if you are allowed to untap with it, your odds to win the game just like kind of skyrocket. It's just you get to play a deep forge plate every turn essentially. So it's having that level of inevitability coming out of a Rakano deck is kind of absurd. So now that Rakano decks are adopting that and forcing you to like kind of deal with literally every creature, because if you don't, aReNGee will just equip them. Then it just gives a whole new dimension to the deck and a resilience that it didn't previously have.
Can be a pretty fun matchup. And of course, Ijin is very good with the Silverwing familiars. You can have like the fun flyers going over with the 4/4s. There's a lot of different ways that you can like get that extra power sink and sort of get some late game presence out of the card. It's a decent enough pressure game anyway, so it's nice to have that unit anyways, just as a like 3/2 just sort of attack in, push damage type unit. But it's good for basically matching up against the slower decks and still getting a lot of value in the later game.
Yeah, and on the Felnscar side, this is a cool iteration of Reanimator as we see the 2/2 flyer come down for Unearthly, putting early pressure. The red cards are mainly for Quarry, Voprex, Fertile Tyrant, and Statuary Maiden. So it is a Reanimator deck. There are reanimation elements, although the only discard is really like Quarry. So generally, this is just going to be a slower, proactive Felnscar deck that will every once in a while get to reanimate something with Vara or Grasping.
Yeah, Calamdur has the option of annihilating one of these two units, and he has to choose between the Tinker Overseer and the Rakano Outlaw. The Overseer is not likely to get much bigger here, so the Outlaw is the clear choice, and Calamdur can maintain the other Annihilate for either the Overseer or just hold it until he sees a Deep Forge Plate or something bigger.
Yep, and Unearthly's a little bit choked on mana and also has 2 of his Vanquishes in hand, so this is not like the best draw for Unearthly. All of his pressure is gone. He's draw power to play anything else. He did not. He has to pass. And he has his 2 of his Vanquishes, which are some of the worst cards in the matchup. They have very few targets. So
here, Calamdur is having similar power problems, but they're more related to influence. He can play down his Statuary Maiden, but he's not going to be able to cast either Wisdom or the Voprex without significant help in the influence department.
Yep, and I don't think we'll get to develop the Silvering Familiar if he is able to draw power next turn, play aReNGee, protect aReNGee, and then go off on the Silvering Familiar. That is a very reasonable path to victory.
Yeah, with the Vara's Favor here for Calamdur, that's a potential way to just sort of pop the Silverwing Familiar's Aegis and actually get the removal that Calamdur is looking for. I think Voprex is actually going to be a relevant card in this game, just on account of the fact that cards or units thing is very good against this sort of mid-rangey archetype where Unearthly will have cards in hand and also have several units out on the board that he's hoping to pump.
Although, unfortunately for Calamdur, All he needs is Silver Familiar Aegean. Like he'll happily discard his hand if he just gets to keep Silver Aegean.
I think that may not be the case. Like it's possible that those two cards can just win him the game, but there is a permafrost available. So if Voprex comes down and forces the sacrifice, I almost would have held on to that permafrost. I think that there's something to be said about it. Okay.
Well, he would have to draw power for the plate. Like that's if you want to be greedy, you can do that. But now Aegean just gets to go off. This is 5/5. It's going to be 9/9 next turn. So like Voprex doesn't really matter.
Only a big issue, and with Voprex coming down, basically Calendar will be able to Voprex next turn as well if he blocks with Voprex, which is pretty fun. I think Vara in particular is going to keep this board stalled for a while until Kalimdor can locate and annihilate. Unearthly may end up discarding his hand, but if he discards his hand, then he's going to run out of other options really, really quickly.
Well,
so
this is the awesome thing about Aegean is he doesn't need other options. He gets to play 4/4 weapon every turn. So the Kalimdor still has to kill this Silver Familiar or he's dead. This is why Aegean is so strong, is because you don't need other cards. You just Aegean every turn.
Yeah, it certainly could end up being the fatal push here. Without Deep Forge Plate to push over damage, Voprex can now block. Basically, Kalimdor has to draw a Death Strike or an Annihilate, or else he's going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, the Silver Ring's just going to keep coming in, and then any future creatures that Unearthly draws off the top, he can cast anything in his deck now. Aegean can still just keep doing that. And he did draw a Permafrost for the Silver Familiar, but again, any creature that Unearthly draws at the top is immediately a threat because of the Aegean.
Yep. It should be an interesting setup from here. Vara can bring back Voprex, which will allow for another cards or here. I think that overall that should be pretty cool. But we'll see exactly how much damage Kalimdor can end up pushing before Unearthly's units come down. I think that at this point, Kalimdor is in a very, very strong position. Just that much damage on the field is definitely going to be really, really difficult for deal with.
Yeah, Unearthly needs to draw. Well, Champion of Glory is like one of the best possible creatures you could draw. It has quick draw, so making it giant. Oh no, Unearthly passed before equipping it. So that like matters a little bit, but the counterclock is relevant. So it's possible he wouldn't be winning the race anyway. He really needs a Deep Forge Plate to free the Silver Familiar, which he does have 3 more in his deck.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much game for Unearthly. Without the amount of extra gas in hand, there's no way to deal with Kalimdor's just cavalcade of units. Aegean can, of course, make things bigger over and over again, but it's just not going to end up being particularly good in this situation where he's facing down so much damage from so many deadly and
he can actually, he's not dead here. He can play the Silverwing, equip it with a plate, and then chump block this one of the 6/6s. Prevents the 5/5 from attacking. 6. Actually, I think it's still like exactly lethal.
Yeah, there may be a temporary out, but it's pretty much curtains.
Oh no, because it's a 5/5.
Kalimdor is at least out of
still,
available power, so yeah.
Still has a trade with the Voprex. Yeah, I thought it was a 6/6 to 5/5. Yeah, so he's like not dead, but
yeah, I think Unearthly did make an error in not equipping the 3/3 with the plate. There was a case to be made for leaving the 2 blockers open, but since Unearthly was not available to block anyways, it seems like it didn't really work out very well for him. So we do end up going into game 2, and we're going to see exactly what the Reanimator deck decides to bring in and what kind of plate variant Unearthly is going to be sideboarding into.
Yeah, Unearthly just wants to maintain being low to the ground. The main problem cards in this matchup for Unearthly are Saturated Maiden and Steward of the Past. There's nothing really in the sideboard he can bring in to deal with those outside of, I guess, Soulfire Drake to fly over the top of them, which we will likely see. The protects to deal with the removal also matter. Silver Familiar is just a good card in this matchup because it flies over those cards like we talked about. So I would expect light sideboarding from Unearthly here. There's not a lot he has to deal with the problem cards. He just needs to be proactive and be aggressive and just run over Kalimdor, which I feel like his deck is situated to do a high percentage of the time.
We see a Grasping at Shadows come out of the Reanimator deck, leaving only the Varas as the options. I really do like this deck's sort of overall Reanimator plan, which is to play Varas at the top and just get the overall value, as opposed to cheating out things and doing that sort of like fun combo style. This is more about the value and the overall mid-rangey just delightfulness of Kalimdor's deck, and we'll see exactly how well it turns out for him.
Yep. And Unearthly does have one card here, and we might actually see Unearthly not play Outlaw this turn because it's his only creature, and he has Protect. So being able to protect it matters a lot. Now, these draw on the second one, he'll probably just play one because if it dies, there's a backup. But if generally when you're playing Ricardo and you have one creature, you really want to protect it if you can.
He wants to annihilate this turn and try to dodge the protect, or if he wants to just hold the spell and see if he can throw it as a response. I think here the Lightning Storm is a pretty good choice.
Yeah, the Lightning Storm is likely not going to get much more value. Like maybe Unearthly extends into it, but it's one of the cards that you kind of have to like try and leverage in this matchup.
It's maybe a little curious because, of course, Calendar did have some issues with Eugene last game, and having a Lightning Storm for her is particularly good. But we do end up with the Annihilates being used and the Protect, of course, showing its face. Statuary Maiden is probably the next thing that Calendar will drop.
Yeah, and fortunately for Unearthly, he has a plate and a Valkyrie. So if he draws a power, he can play up his Outlaw attack properly. Crown Watch also allows for that. He could also just Valkyrie the Statuary Maiden, make it useless. It depends upon how much he cares about Unearthly or Calendar getting cudgels.
Irrelevant, but oftentimes Statuary Maiden is just not a big enough threat. I think here Valkyrie Enforcer is just fine, and it does prevent Unearthly from attacking profitably this turn, so he might just choose to pass. He could push the 3 damage and threaten to kill the Statuary Maiden, but that block
it's a free chump check. Just check your opponent's pulse, see if they're paying attention. Both have endurance, that's fine.
Yep.
We just see a Corey here. Ruin likely to be the pick.
Yeah, it's quite possible. We toss the Shadow Sigil there, and with the Annihilate up for Valkyrie Enforcer, that's one less flyer on the board. Calendar's in a bit of trouble here. He does get to ruin the Deep Forge Plate, which is extremely strong, but that big 6/6 with all of the fixings is going to be pretty tough to deal with for a while.
It's just to see the Crown Watch pump go on the champion and not the Outlaw. The Outlaw has Warcry. We get to start accruing those triggers anyway. It also makes the worst creature better. So it's odd to see that. It does push through a little bit more damage, but incremental damage doesn't really matter, as odd as that sounds in the Rakano matchup, as much as like snowballing Warcry does.
Mm-hmm. It's actually like really great for Callum to hear that he has this 0-cost ruin from Quarry. It means that he always has a free answer for Deep Forge Plate and gets to play all of his power every turn without having to leave up power for ruin so that he can dodge around that exceptional amount of Deep Forge Plate damage.
Yeah.
So we'll probably see the plate here, but Unearthly is considering his options.
Yeah, the obvious play would be to plate up the Outlaw, jam with your 2 giant creatures. We do see that Unearthly kind of senses the 0-mana ruin and just goes all in. I don't hate this. I guess that he knows. Actually, let me check Kalimdir's deck list. Kalimdir does not play Deathstrike. So actually, that is why Unearthly did this, because this champion is like a giant champion's literally unbeatable. There's no answer in Kalimdir's deck for a giant champion.
It's very hard for Calendar to deal with large units apart from just generating large units of his own. These quick draw units are exceptionally bad for the deadly stuff. So like basically it negates the deadly on a lot of the cards that Calendar would otherwise use to defend himself. And Calendar still playing a defensive game is probably going to end up getting locked out of this one.
Yeah, so normally Kalimdir's answers are Annihilate, Permafrost, and he doesn't have any hard removal, and Champion of Glory dodges both of those spells. So if Kalimdir just shoves all in on Champion of Glory, the only out in Kalimdir's deck is providing enough toughness to block it in their side, or Witch Storm. So generally just shoving all in, normally not the thing you'd want to do in this matchup, is actually a reasonable play.
A Hammer of Might coming down on yet another quick draw unit. From here, the blocks don't look especially good. Kalimdir chumps, but I think there's too many threats here for Kalimdir to easily deal with.
Yeah, Unearthly was able to spread out his buffs, make a bunch of different threats. Furnace Mage plus Annihilate does stem a bit of bleeding here. He can kill the Hammer of Might and then kill a 3/3, but again, Champion of Glory, still a problem.
Yep, very likely he'll end up chumping the champion just so he can draw with Felon Bloodcaster and pick up some more damage. There's a case for using Felon Bloodcaster to try and pull a Warcry unit, but Calendar's never going to get the opportunity to do that with the amount of stuff that is happening on Unearthly's end.
We'll see Unearthly get medium punished for not going even more all in on the champion by this Annihilate, but again, 6/6 champion still demanding chump blocks every turn. The 3/3 is demanding a charade, so Kalimdor is going to be on nothing versus a 6/6 or 2/1, and Statuary Maiden is not going to be good enough. Although he's not just stone dead.
Yeah, he gets to chump block the 6/6. He'll take 2, and from here, a torch is pretty easy pickings. There's a lot of ways that Kalimdor can just end up being completely destroyed here. I'm just not sure if there's an answer that Kalimdor can be drawing into from this point.
No, yeah, Giant Champion of Glory is just very, very hard for Kalimdor's deck to beat the way it's constituted. So, yeah, I think Unearthly found one of his game plans. Like, Silvering Familiar and Champion of Glory appear to be his most powerful creatures in the matchup.
Like, answers for Kalimdor, Voprex obviously not going to help that much. There's just not enough ways for him to easily deal with the larger Champion of Glory with the Crown Watch Paladin. Obviously, you can just knock the equipment off of those things, but with Crown Watch Paladin, that buff is permanent, so there's no particularly good way to deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. And as it looks like both players are going to be content with their sideboard. We do see Kalimdor like looking over some things, but generally it's really just about whether or not Unearthly can stick one of those important threats, because Kalimdor does have a lot of removal. Statuary Maiden and Through the Past are both very good at blocking all of the non-Silvering Familiar and quick draw creatures. So we'll see if Unearthly is able to form Voltron once again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as you said, there isn't an answer in Kalimdor's deck or in his sideboard against a Champion of Glory with a +3/+3 bonus. Once you have that 6 power, you basically can run over anything in the deck, barring a couple of Death Touch units that are like, it's really hard for Kalimdor to get out from under that. So if Unearthly can continue that sort of strategy, that's going to be pretty tough. And we do see a Champion of Glory coming down.
Here's the star of the show, and he's going to get a Scepter, so he's immediately out of torch range. And here it is. Voltron has been assembled already on turn 3. So Kalimdor, he can beat this. He can get Witch, Storm, ruin it, make it smaller, then torch it or something. But he doesn't have any of those cards. None of the cards currently in his hand deal with the Champion of Glory, and it is going to get real big, real fast.
Most likely a second Storm here. There's not really anything else that he can cast this early that's going to help him out, so he's going to have to draw pretty hard and try and find it.
Yeah, we'll see which one of these giant things Unearthly wants to extend with. I do like Hammer of Might. Hammer of Might does provide some amount of value, so it makes follow-up threats bigger, and yeah, I don't know what Kalimdor can draw here, and I'm pretty sure the answer is nothing.
It seems like the fatal weakness in Kalimdor's deck has been exposed. There's just no way to deal with this card, and unfortunately, it's definitely already at the tipping point. From here, oh goodness, a 9/9 Deep Forge Plate coming down from Unearthly. That's pretty much a quick game, and Unearthly will take the series.
Yep. Yeah, and you saw that Unearthly recognized the weakness of Kalimdor's deck, and that is because players know deck lists here. So you saw in a situation where normally you would pump up the Outlaw, and I was like, oh, that play seems weird. And then I looked at the deck list and realized what Unearthly realizes, that that deck is just not equipped to beat a Giant Champion of Glory. They just cannot do it. So good job by Unearthly recognizing what his opponent's deck was weak to, and then playing in such a way to maximize that. Although in game 2, he kind of just had to shove all in, and it just so happened that his opponent was not able to deal with it.
2-1. Mm-hmm. Well, at least Kalimdor got an excellent Voprex off and reclaimed a little glory that way, but it definitely ended up pretty bad for Unearthly on that particular setup. So, yeah, looks like that is the game. Should be another win for Unearthly, so pretty solid. Just we're seeing some pretty solid play from the aggro-oriented decks that have been brought. There aren't that many of them in the tournament, but it looks like they're doing pretty well so far.
Yeah, like I've said before, I think this tournament is a prime position for the people who have the pet aggro decks or well-tuned aggro decks and know what they're doing to attack the meta. The meta is very, very vulnerable to decks like Unearthly's, like Burn Queen, stuff like that. It's just very it's ripe for the pickings. And we do actually have a backup match for you guys between Toth and Komodo. They are currently waiting to start the game. I assume they're waiting on us, but when that starts, we will have that for you guys. So let me see what these people or what players are on, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, we are into game 3 of this particular matchup. We have a Felnscar deck versus whatever the other player is running. I'm sure that Lights don't have that.
It's the two team built decks. It is the fire or the Felnscar deck versus the Time Justice Primal mid range deck. Both of these decks are the product of our two teams here that have come to this.
Yeah, we already see Feln Stranger coming out to fix up here. I really like this Feln Stranger in the deck. It allows you to get those easy Feln Bloodcasters on 3. It allows you to actually put Thunderstrike Dragon in the deck, which is something that you don't see very often in Feln decks. That card is an extremely good card advantage engine and potential finisher, and it's really nice to see it in a 3-color deck with the Feln Strangers helping to fix.
Yeah, Feln Stranger is also mainly concession to having functional champions of Cunning, to have that on, because a fully functional champion of Cunning is big game. Although Toth, we see here stumbling on power in a mid-range mirror, which is not the place you want to be. And we will see the Steward of Prophecy come down. Not the best hand to see. I guess Vara's a good target. The other things are kind of medium. But the good news for Komodo is that Toth is a million miles from casting any of these.
Yeah, any one of these cards is an additional 2 or 3 cards advantage. So Vara or Feln Bloodcaster are very good choices. Thunderstrike Dragons are quite a ways out, and also there's always going to be an extra copy of them. I think it might be best to silence the Bloodcaster, but Vara is also an excellent choice. And with both of them out of the mix, we'll definitely see what Toth can end up doing.
I think if there's only one Bloodcaster, you definitely silence the Bloodcaster. But since there's 2, it's so unlikely that the second one ever gets to the point where it ultimates, considering your opponent missed their 3rd land drop and again, their 3rd power drop, and then also missed it again this turn.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think at this point, with Toth just stuck on 2 power, this might be a shorter game than anticipated. Normally this matchup ends up with a lot of stuff going on, but we've got Backlash going off, and Toth gets one more chance to draw a power and start getting into this game.
I mean, Toth is trying to claw back. He's doing a reasonable job of limiting Komodo's pressure. He can annihilate his Steward of the Past, although Komodo does have 3 more threats in hand. So he's certainly on the back foot, but his hand is full of gas. And if he could draw running power for the next 4 turns, unlikely as that is, he can get back into this game.
Yeah, it's not out of the question for sure. I think at this point, Toth is thinking about this Annihilate, ends up throwing it at the Steward of Prophecy. That seems right. It's a pity that Komodo ended up not playing anything this round, because another Great Parliament would have presented a better target for Toth.
Komodo kind of did Toth the courtesy of not applying any more pressure that turn, although Toth, again, missing on power, so not really able to punish Komodo for it. But again, missing power. This is very unfortunate for Toth, very unlikely. Not really a typical way you'll see the game play out.
Even if he had red influence, he'd be able to play into some other options at least. But this is going extremely poorly for Toth.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Even if Toth drew out of this a turn or 2 ago, I think he's in a reasonable spot. He has these quarries to draw, whatever. He drawn to removal potentially is a million creatures. These Bloodcasters can block, but I think now we're at the point where he's too far behind. I guess Red Source into Quarry into Permafrost is a way to stem a lot of the pressure, but even that I'm not sure gets him there.
Yeah, he's very, very slow here. He gets to prevent 2 damage with the Feln Bloodcaster or the Feln Stranger, and from here, Quarry into Permafrost certainly would be an option, but it wouldn't quite save him. And
and Komodo even has the Protect and the Backlash for the still had all these, so we'll see Komodo run over Toth there. Toth unfortunately not having much cooperation on the side of his deck, so that'll happen sometimes, but it's not generally what you see in games of Eternal, especially after the recent change to redraw on how your hand works, the power distribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tricky setup of mechanics. I wonder how Toth's power base is set up and whether or not that's going to work out well for him. It looks like overall, that looked like a pretty decent deck, and could definitely have gone a lot further. But we will see this series being taken by somebody else.
Yep, and yeah, I would have liked to see how that matchup plays out. It's 2 of the 3-color decks that both of the teams brought to the tournament. They both went very different directions, but similar places of just 3-color mid-range, good stuff decks. So I would have liked to see how those matched up in an actual real game. but unfortunately, we just saw a Toth kind of like flounder there. So
Yeah. There are 33 power sources in Toth's deck, which is very slightly on the light end if you're trying to get to Vara the Fate Touched and Thunderstrike Dragon, but really probably just ends up being a round of bad luck. I think that for the most part, Toth has the deck built correctly, and there's no particular accounting for it.
no, yeah, with Wisdom of the Elders and Quarry, I definitely think 33 is about where you want to be. But it's just unfortunate. So that was
all of that extra card draw. You do need to actually find the red influence.
that does certainly matter. But that is going to do it for our first round of the losers bracket. We will be back shortly with the second round of losers bracket games. We will see who remains in the tournament and who gets eliminated and who tries to soldier on to our top 8. But until then, for LocoPojo, this is Truedawn, and we will see you all very soon.
See you soon.